The train pulled away from the small Montana depot with a long, lonely whistle that echoed across the wide prairie. Clouds of steam drifted into the evening sky as Clara Bennett stood frozen on the wooden platform, clutching a single worn leather suitcase. Just moments earlier, the man who had promised to marry her had boarded that train without looking back. His final words still echoed in her mind. "I'm sorry, Clara. I can't do this." Then he was gone. She watched until the last rail car disappeared around the bend, taking with it every dream she had carried across hundreds of miles. The station slowly emptied. Families reunited, travelers departed, wagons rolled away, and laughter faded into silence. Clara remained alone beneath the fading sunlight, fighting tears she refused to let anyone see. She had nowhere to go, no family waiting, and barely enough money left for a night's meal. The little depot master quietly locked the office, gave her a sympathetic nod, and wished her luck before disappearing into town. Soon only the wind remained, carrying dust across the empty tracks. As darkness slowly settled over the frontier, Clara realized the truth she had tried to ignore. She was stranded in a town where nobody knew her name. Every step away from the depot felt heavier than the last. The lights of nearby saloons glowed warmly, but they were no place for a respectable woman traveling alone. She considered sleeping on the station bench until morning, though even that no longer felt safe. Her stomach growled from hunger, yet she refused to spend the few coins hidden in her pocket. Those coins might mean survival tomorrow. At that very moment, the steady sound of approaching horse hooves broke the silence. A tall cowboy rode slowly into the depot yard, his weathered brown hat shaded sharp, thoughtful eyes that noticed everything. His name was Ethan Walker, owner of one of the largest cattle ranches in the valley. He had come expecting to collect a shipment of ranch supplies, but instead he found a young woman standing alone beneath the flickering lantern, trying desperately not to cry. Ethan dismounted without speaking. He noticed the dusty suitcase, the tired expression, and the unmistakable look of someone whose world had just collapsed. He kept a respectful distance before quietly asking, "Miss ... are you waiting for someone?" Clara forced a weak smile and shook her head. "No, I was, but he already left." There was something in her voice that told Ethan everything he needed to know. He had seen hardship before. The West was filled with people chasing dreams that often slipped away. But there was also something different about this woman. She carried herself with quiet dignity despite the pain written across her face. "You have family nearby?" he asked gently. Again she shook her head. "No." The answer hung heavily in the evening air. Ethan glanced toward the empty streets. He knew exactly what could happen to a young woman alone after dark in a frontier town. He hesitated only for a moment before making a decision that surprised even himself. "My ranch is about an hour from here," he said calmly. "My housekeeper, Mrs. Harper, has plenty of room. You'll have a warm meal, a clean bed, and you'll be safe. No obligations, just until you decide what comes next." Clara looked at him with uncertainty. Every lesson she'd ever learned warned her not to trust strangers, yet something about the cowboy's steady voice felt honest. He wasn't staring at her with pity or hidden intentions. He simply looked concerned. "I don't even know your name," she whispered. "Ethan Walker. I'm Clara." He smiled politely. "Nice to meet you, Clara." She lowered her eyes. "I couldn't possibly repay your kindness." "You don't have to." The words caught her completely off guard. After several long moments, Clara finally nodded. Ethan carefully secured her suitcase behind the saddle and offered his hand to help her onto the wagon he had brought for supplies. As the horses began moving away from the depot, Clara looked back one last time at the empty train tracks where her old life had ended. Neither of them spoke much during the journey. The stars slowly filled the Montana sky while coyotes howled in the distance. Ethan respected her silence, understanding that some wounds needed quiet more than conversation. What Clara didn't know was that this single decision would change both of their lives forever. The broken-hearted woman who believed she had lost everything was riding toward a place where hope waited patiently beyond the horizon, and the lonely cowboy who had spent years hiding behind hard work and solitude had no idea that the stranger beside him was about to awaken a future he thought he'd buried long ago. Morning sunlight spilled across the rolling Montana hills as Clara awoke to the sound of birds singing outside her window. For the first time in many days, she had slept peacefully. The room was simple but warm, with a handmade quilt neatly folded across the bed and wildflowers resting in a glass jar on the windowsill. As she looked out, endless green pastures stretched toward distant mountains, where cowboys were already beginning another day's work. Down in the yard, Ethan was saddling horses before sunrise, just as he did every morning. There was something comforting about the quiet rhythm of ranch life. No loud promises, no empty words, only honest work and peaceful mornings. Mrs. Harper greeted Clara with a warm smile and a hearty breakfast. "Mr. Walker doesn't talk much," she chuckled, "but he's got one of the kindest hearts you'll ever find." Clara smiled politely, though she wasn't sure she believed anyone could truly be that good. After everything she had endured, trusting people again felt impossible. Rather than spending her days feeling sorry for herself, Clara asked if there was anything she could do around the ranch. Mrs. Harper happily accepted the help. Soon Clara was baking fresh bread, mending clothes, organizing supplies, and even helping teach Ethan's young ranch hands to read during quiet evenings. The lonely ranch slowly began to feel different. Laughter returned to the dining table. Fresh flowers appeared in the house. Music drifted from the old piano that had gathered dust for years. Even the workers noticed that Ethan smiled more often than he used to. Weeks passed, and the friendship between Ethan and Clara grew stronger. They shared long conversations on the porch after sunset, watching the sky fill with countless stars. Ethan finally spoke about losing both his parents years earlier, and how work had become the only thing keeping him moving forward. Clara quietly admitted how deeply the betrayal at the depot had shattered her confidence. Ethan listened without interruption. He never judged her pain or rushed her healing. Instead, he simply reminded her every day that her worth had never depended on someone else's decision to leave. One afternoon, trouble arrived unexpectedly. The very man who had abandoned Clara stepped onto the ranch. Dust covered his boots, but regret covered his face even more heavily. He claimed he had made a terrible mistake. He begged Clara to forgive him and promised they could start over somewhere far away. For a brief moment, painful memories rushed back. She remembered waiting on that lonely depot platform, believing her future had disappeared forever. Then she looked around the ranch. She saw the people who had welcomed her without asking for anything in return. She saw Mrs. Harper smiling from the porch. She saw hard-working ranch hands tipping their hats respectfully. Finally, her eyes met Ethan's. He said nothing. He didn't plead for her to stay. He simply stood quietly, willing to accept whatever decision she believed was right. Clara realized that true love never demanded or manipulated. It protected, respected, and patiently waited. She turned toward the man who had broken her heart and gently shook her head. "You left when I needed someone most," she said calmly. "Sometimes a train carries away more than people. It carries away second chances." Without anger or bitterness, she wished him well and watched him ride away. This time, she felt no tears, only peace. As autumn painted the valley with brilliant shades of gold, Ethan invited Clara to walk with him beneath the towering cottonwood trees near the river. The evening breeze carried the scent of pine and fresh earth. After a long silence, Ethan stopped walking. His voice was steady but nervous. "The night I found you at that depot," he said softly, "I thought I was helping a stranger. I never imagined God was bringing someone who would make this ranch feel like home again." He reached into his pocket and held out a simple silver ring that had belonged to his mother. "I don't know what tomorrow holds," he continued, "but if you'll stay, I'd be honored to spend every tomorrow beside you." Clara's eyes filled with happy tears. Months earlier, those same eyes had watched hope disappear down a railroad track. Now they looked toward a future brighter than she had ever imagined. With a trembling smile, she whispered the words that changed both their lives forever. "I'll stay." The valley echoed with joyful laughter as friends and ranch hands celebrated the wedding. A few weeks later, the depot where Clara's heart had once been broken became nothing more than a distant memory. She learned that life's greatest blessings sometimes arrive disguised as heartbreak, and that one act of unexpected kindness can completely rewrite someone's future. Years later, travelers passing Ethan Walker's ranch often spoke about the smiling couple who welcomed strangers with warm meals, open doors, and generous hearts. Whenever someone arrived carrying heavy burdens, Clara always remembered the lonely evening she had stood on that depot platform. She never forgot the simple words that had rescued her life. Stay with me. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more emotional Old West stories filled with hope, courage, faith, and unforgettable frontier adventures. Your support helps keep these stories alive.